Hello everybody, welcome back to some creative space engineers. The world is just taking a little bit longer to load than usual, so I thought I'd start the stream and give everyone a chance to get in and watch while it's loading. Some news from the space engineers community. I noticed this morning that on Izzy's Discord, Lance has posted some links to some of Izzy's scripts on the Space Engineers mod.io for Xbox. This means that they're testing scripts on Xbox. Whether they'll work or not, whether it'll be feasible or not, is still up for grabs, but hopefully coming soon. In other news, Lucas has updated his Reavers mod for MES with some new behaviours and to make use of his Rival AI add-on as well. Should present some far more interesting challenges in terms of the AI and different encounters that MES spawns. So in today's creative stream, I've got two things planned that I want to do. One is to have a look at the progress on the drill rig and just have a look through some of the issues that I've encountered with it. And the other is I want to have a look at some player-made weaponry and how to build it. So we will do that and see what else we can come up with while we're in here. So, first things first, I did leave this drill rig running for several hours after the last stream, and a few things that I noticed with it as it was drilling through. So the first one, you can see I've dug out a chunk of land here because even though we put the downward facing drill in there to make space for the rotor and this piston, I didn't fully take account of the fact that this section would also need space drilling out for it to be able for this to extend properly. So that's one issue, and I think one that can be fixed by the addition of another couple of downward facing drills across this side. The other issue that I came across that I wasn't expecting, to be honest, was that even with that downward facing drill down there, this piston assembly and the rotor at the front kept hitting the ground. It kept dropping down and hitting the ground every few meters. And what I found was that actually it's this hinge, and when we look at the hinge, we can see that the current angle is 1 degree. Now that was at minus 0.5 when we started, and I know it was at minus 0.5 because this at the back here was touching this landing gear. So what's happened is, even though these hinges are very, very strong, as this has extended, the additional cantilever weight at this end has caused the hinge to move very, very slightly. And what was happening was I was drilling out a little bit of space and then letting it extend some more, and that drill at the end there should have been enough to just continue clearing enough space. But as we extended further and further, that hinge moved just slightly continuously, to the point that the rotor and this piston head were resting on the ground, and that meant that every so often there was a little bump in the terrain and they would get stuck, and so it would stop moving forwards. The drill obviously wasn't doing anything at this point, because all you're doing is digging a deeper and deeper channel, but you're still getting stuck on what you've dug previously. So in order for this kind of assembly to even work, this hinge must be locked at 0. There's no other way around that. Before you start drilling, lock that hinge. That's it. So although this will work, this whole thing will function, there are some issues with it. I'm not completely happy with the drill head. I must admit that it feels like a lot of drills and a lot of problems that go with those drills because of the way it's set up. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to leave this drilling and just see how much further we get into the mountain here now that the hinge is locked. Because if we stand still here, we should be able to see that it is still moving very, very slightly. It's barely perceptible because of the slow speed of the pistons, but down this end, certainly we can see that combined movement, and it is still moving forwards now that that hinge is locked. All of these pistons, the hinge, the rotors, everything has got share inertia tents turned on to minimise the amount of wobble that we get. And I'm not hearing anywhere near as much clanging going on. I do know I'm going to have to manually dig out some more of this channel here just to make space for this other hinge. So that's something that I'm going to just quickly do now. Just to get that out of the way so that we don't have to come back here and do this later. But obviously having to dig out a manual channel like this is not going to be ideal in a survival setting. So that should give us enough clearance for this piston anyway for now. I do want to just see how far it will go, how deep it will get into the mountain there. And that'll give me a good idea of what the whole rig is capable of as we go forwards with it in survival eventually. I do still like the vehicle. I like having it as a way of being able to drill down and get to deposits and being able to drill tunnels. I was hoping to be able to drill a square tunnel with it, but that is feeling less and less likely at this point. So for now, I think I'm going to come over here and just drop this off entirely here. Let's have a look. Actually, before we start, let's take a copy of this. Take another copy and stick it over there. And what I'd like to do here is maybe make it so that this top piston here is our main piston. It is the main forward facing piston that's going to have everything attached to it. And to do that, I'm going to need to rearrange how these tubes and pistons are laid out. So this first one here currently comes round here, and then at the front of there we're going back and we're going straight into that middle one, when actually what I want to do is I want to bring that over to this one, and then have this one come out and back around and into this one. So what I may have to do is a little bit of jiggery pokery to bring this out one extra further at the back to take it down into here. Now this is all going to be incredibly hard because obviously all of these are subgrids, and as soon as I disconnect something it's all going to fall to pieces. I am going to lock this in place, so hopefully that's going to hold things in place. I don't know which one it's actually holding on to, but we will see in a moment. And we're going to get rid of that and just let that drop off, and we're going to get rid of that whole piece. Not interested in that at the moment. And now we're going to have to kind of backtrack a little with this. So if I take this back like this, we can take whole sections off and just work our way backwards. Actually, no, we do want to keep that just there, and what we want to do is come back an extra one, and then we'll just curve it downwards and around the back like this. And because we've come out that extra one, I'm going to go back in the extra one as well, like so. And then we can go and put our pistons back on if I have them somewhere, which I don't. So we'll have those. So we'll get our two pistons back on again. And then from here, we're going to go back up and then we'll come back down the middle, and that just rearranges how these pistons are arranged. So we've got a central piston that we can deal with for the main drill head. I'm not a huge fan of how that makes things look at the back here. It does start to look a little more messy, but it's also a little more industrial, so we'll see. I'll see how that comes out in the end. So we can drop these back in just here, and we've now got a central piston here that we can do something else with. Now what I'm going to do on the front of this is we need to bring it out just one more step here, and I think possibly using an armoured conveyor would be from the AQD pack would make some sense here, because it will give us a solid piece to actually build onto, and it doesn't need the clearance around those other blocks, so we're good. So on this bit then, the next part, we're going to build the actual rotor part itself, the rotor assembly and drill assembly itself. So we'll have an advanced rotor. Actually, we should just be able to put the advanced rotor in here and change the displacement on this to maximum. And that will give us quite a large gap then between everything else and the drill head. So that's good. I'm just going to lock this rotor for now so we don't end up with it getting in the way and dropping around or anything like that. Now I am contemplating a hinge here as well, but I don't think I will. So if that's the case, we're probably we want to attach a small head here anyway, and then move that displacement up to maximum again, just so that we're in the right place. Yep. Okay. Now off of here, we're going to want one of our conveyor blocks here so that we've got something to connect drills to. And the question is, do we go this way round or this way round? And at this point I think this way round. No, we'll go this. No, we can't go that way round because we need that large connector to be in place there. So we're going to have to go this way round and then use some small conveyors let's make this okay, so we're going to come around to the front like this. Actually, no, we're not. We're going to so I need to get okay, I see what we're going to do. Okay, so let's do this as we were going to do it. And then put a conveyor junction there. Connect up there, conveyor junction there. Okay, so it is viable to have just one or two blocks between the drills. But I definitely want this central drill in the middle here, because that's going to give us sort of where our direct line down is on there. Yeah. And then that's just to make that actually look complete. That is a little bit of greeble. It's not necessary, but it does make it look a little more complete. It gives us two blocks between the drills if I place another drill here, but what I'm actually going to do is we're going to do the same again. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. and then we'll drop that drill there, and again we'll greeble it into these like that. So that will be absolutely fine in terms of a drill head. That drill head I think is big enough that it will be able to spin and drill out enough space for everything that we want to capture. But what I would just like to do as well on here is I'd like to have an extra drill, and actually it might be better there. And just have them facing out at the sides like that. And you might think, well, why not just put one on the end here? And yeah, you could, but it's still going to get clangy on the sides of the drill where it's not cutting, whereas like this, these end drills should make sure that we're always clearing enough space for this conveyor assembly on either end, and just helps to dig the tunnel out basically as we go. Now, in addition to that, what we can do is, as we're lifting this up, we may want to just drill straight downwards a little bit first, just to get underneath where the vehicle is sitting. If we've got this up at a full 90 degrees, then we're not going to be able to have this spinning to start with. So being able to just drill straight down into the ground with it as is will make life quite a lot easier, although I am looking at this and thinking we're probably going to want an extra couple of drills on here, and I'm starting to get the feeling that that's still a lot of drills. But actually I think that will work, and that will work quite a lot better in terms of a rotating drill head, because we can start drilling into the ground, and then once it's below the level that the wheels are sat on, we can then start and have it rotate slowly. And if it's rotating slowly enough, these will cut out enough space and we'll end up with a nice round hole going down. And if we go straight on into a mountain, we should get a fairly square hole. We're not going to be able to drive into it ever. Making a drill assembly big enough to be able to drive this thing into its hole is just going to be a lot of materials, and is going to be somewhat unwieldy to use as well in other applications. So I quite like this in that we can just make it work for us as a nice drill rig. And I'm really tempted to try to build this as is in the survival game, if not tomorrow, maybe next week, and that can give us a significant mining ability. And if nothing else, it will at least let us drill some pretty nice shafts down at a nice shallow angle into the ores, so that we can then bring the mole miner in and do some manual mining in there if needs be. So with that said, I think it's time for us to cut this off. I will be blueprinting this in pieces, and my hope is that we can find a way to get this projected. Yeah, this whole assembly here does make that very, very difficult to achieve, must admit. Yeah. Yep, so I think it's just going to be a case of we're going to have to build this in the survival world. Now that I know roughly what I'm doing with it, there's a few things I'd like to change. I'd probably bring this up one block here, so that we've got the piston for raise and lowering, but we don't have this little U shape underneath that hits on the ground when we bounce too hard. And I don't think I'm going to be able to lift this up at all, or lift this up very high at all, but we do have connectors on the sides that we can use to throw out stone if we're going after specific materials. Possibly. May have to stick a sorter on there for that. We could use this section at the back, actually, couldn't we? So if everything's extending, so let's just look at this then. So what's our first piston? So we come back here and into here. So this piston's extending, which is going to pull this forwards. Yeah, so that's not going to work at all, is it? So this is what we call a design flaw, in that when these pistons begin to extend, this bit inside here isn't going to move anywhere, but this back piece is going to try to move forwards. So we are going to need to redesign that a little bit as well when we come to it, because it'll need to, instead of wrapping around where it is doing, it'll need to, yeah, and I did just do that, but that's going to have to come over this way and then go down. And then into there, like that. Now the question is, do I have... No, I don't have them in here, so I can't use them. I was hoping to have the weld pads and I could just push that forwards a little bit and reattach them, but that isn't going to happen. So the whole top piece of this is going to have to just come off. But now that I know what I'm doing with this, I am happier to just go and build this in the survival world. And be happy to we can build it there. I can get Discord involved in it as well. That's my wife, by the way, not the application. And yeah, we can get something that's going to be both a good utility vehicle and be incredibly useful from a mining perspective. I would much like to have more large storage on it as well. So it might be that we fill that entire middle piece with large storage containers and then have the controls out to one side for it, and that would be perfectly fine as well. But I think I've got a good enough idea now of what I want to do that we can build that when the time comes. So I'm going to leave that where it is for now, and I'm going to leave this where it is. In fact, what we'll do is we'll get this one blueprinted, because there's no subgrids on this. This is just going to be our fighter ship, basically, for going and doing piracy. Built this last week on stream, so let's cut that off and let it fly under its own power. And I'm just going to blueprint that. No, let's delete that actually, and let's go and give the grid a name. So for the time being, I'm just calling this large grid combat ship for now. We will name it properly in the stream. Get a decent screenshot, and that will do for now. So now we'll just go and land this on the ice. Yeah, so it's not especially agile. In terms of thrust power, so our speed is relatively slow. But we should be good at taking drones out with this, and if we can get to where we're just in range of something, we can target its guns and take out turrets and such. And when we can land on the ground, and then power the grid off. There we go. Yep, so that's all good there. We're missing a turret on this corner by the looks of it, but other than that, that'll be a very useful ship for us, and when we've knocked out the turrets on an enemy ship, I can land on the top of it, grapple with the landing gear, and then we can go and board it and take control of it, turn off all of the enemy ship's thrusters, and hopefully bring it home with this. And that'll do that. So what I wanted to do today is go into a little bit about player-made weaponry. Now, player-made weaponry, there's a couple of different forms of that. We've got rotor-mounted turrets that are slaved to some other turret, and therefore they shoot at whatever that turret is shooting at. Now, I'm not sure how well that will work when it comes to weapon core, so I wanted to try that out. So what we're going to do is I'm going to build a tower like we have in the survival game at the moment. And these towers, so my wife and I have built these towers a few times now, and they always seem to be the same dimensions. So I'm just going to stick a cargo container in there, and then how we normally build these is we have them connected to the conveyor network of the base so that they can get ammo, but we build them up with the armoured conveyors inside, giving us a conveyor port on the top, and then we clad the outside in armour blocks going up. But I'm not going to bother with that here because I just want to see how these turrets work. So then we'll normally have we'll normally just put a Gatling turret on the top. So it's normally just a case of we do that, and then we'll have some wind turbines around the edges. I'm just going to stick a couple of batteries on here to give it power, and that would be enough for the turret. So if you imagine that this is all blocked out with armour, like this, and then we might come out another one or two on either side. Just like this. I mean, we normally make these a lot taller, but you get the idea. This is the sort of thing that we'd be dealing with. And we'd have this turret up on the top, and we might have these around the edge of the base, but always in range to be conveyed in. But in this case, this could be a standalone base. We could have a cargo container here to stick some ammo in. That gets piped up for the turret, and the turbines provide power, so we wouldn't need the batteries. Or we might just build one battery in, like under the central block maybe, just for a little bit of redundancy. That's all good, but these turrets only fire so fast, and in the past, having rotor mounted turrets where we switch to small grid and then have a big array of the mounted Gatling guns, and having them track using a remote control block or just the rotors themselves. So you might do this, so we put that on. And then stick that like that. And then on the sides here, go for more advanced rotors, like so. And then, so the beauty of this then becomes, if we do this on either side, we now have two arms that can basically go wherever they want. We can connect those up, and we can use these kinds of Gatling guns or the rockets, things like that, to really just aim them. So we now go how would we do this? So we can see that these have a connector like that. So we just do that all the way up either side there. Like so, and we've now got essentially a rotor turret. Obviously we can stick some armour on this and do whatever with it that way, but this is a rotor turret, and we can set this up to be controlled from another turret. So if we put a normal Gatling turret on the top of here, like this, with a programmable block, we can now have this be a player-made turret. So I'm just going to see how this works. We'll spawn in some enemy ships and just see what sort of attacks this turret will do, if any. It's, as I say, with weapon core enabled, I don't know if the weapon core turrets will even relay their targeting information to this script, but we will see in just a moment. So it's the Whip's turret AI slaving script is the one I prefer. RDAV made one as well. I just like Whips because it has more options. So we'll copy that to the editor. And as Whip says, read the online instructions. So I'm just going to go and open this page up in my browser on my second screen here, so that we can see what's going on. I'll open it in the in-game browser in just a moment. And so what it's saying here, don't edit variables in the code, so we'll check code, everything should be good. Yeah, and we'll load that, so we have that. So what this is saying then is we haven't got any rotor turret groups found, no slave turret groups found, debug mode is off, so it's not doing anything at the moment, which is fine by me. So if we open up our Steam browser, which is supposed to be in here somewhere, let's just go to the workshop. There we go. So we have a browser here, and I can just paste that in and hit enter. So let's have a look here. What have we got to do? So individually configured in the custom data of the programmable block. How do I use this? That's the bit I want. Place the script in programmable block, seed the turret groups, set up turret groups, and then set ownership of everything. Okay, so we need an elevation rotor and an azimuth rotor and a designator, and then we group them all as turret group 1 for lack of anything else. So this is the same principle. Okay, that looks good. So if we name this rotor here elevation, and we name this rotor here with elevation as well, and then this rotor here with azimuth. Okay, that's all good. And then this turret needs designator in its name. Awesome. So we now take those. In fact, we need the Gatling guns as well. And we call this AI turret 1, or I think it was. Let's have a look. Turret group 1 even. We save that. And we now have one rotor turret group found. Okay. So in the custom data here, we have lots of options, but nothing that's giving me any useful information there. So we have it named with designator. They're named elevation, they're named that. So the type doesn't matter, only the range is what it says. Okay, so these aren't AI turrets, that's fine. So that should be working then. That should be just fine. So what we're going to do is I'm going to stick lots of ammo into this container down here. So let's just put plenty in there. Here we go. So those guns are all now getting fed ammo. So let's go and spawn in a bad guy ship, and it's going to have to be one that's got some weaponry on it. Right, let's bring in the mole miner, and I'm going to purposely sit it on its bum. Like that, so that is close enough It has a turret, so it will be considered a threat. And if we now go in here and transfer everything to Space Pirates, then I would expect for this up here to see it as a threat and start shooting at it. Of course, that would rely on it actually having ammo. So it would seem that this turret can't see that as a threat at the moment. So let's try something a little more threatening then. Here we go, this fighter will do, I think. Yeah, that'll do nicely, so we'll copy that in. And I'm just going to sit it up here. So we're definitely within range. And this does not seem to be doing anything at all. Of course, I do need to make this all hostile, so... do I have something I can connect to? There we go. Let's give everything here to Space Pirates. Yes. Okay, so the reason it wasn't targeting that one is because it's below its angle of fire. That is fine. What that did show us, though, is these did not aim or fire at all. So that does mean, I believe, that you can't make player-made turrets like this with the weapon core weapons. It just doesn't work. They don't see them as weapons, which is a huge shame. That is a huge shame, because player-made turrets like this were so much fun. That said, though, weapon core adds a lot of new controls to weapons and actually makes combat more enjoyable. Means that you can target subsystems and only target weapons, for example, if you just want to take the weapons out on a drone or an enemy ship. That's perfectly possible now. I am a bit disappointed that this doesn't work with weapon core, and I'll be pinging a message over on Whip's workshop page for this, just to see if there's anything he can do to update the script to work with weapon core. So with that said, let's get rid of this. And the other thing I wanted to have a go at was making some player-made missiles. Now these I know will work because we're not going to be using weapon core for them, and the player-made missiles are quite useful for taking out cargo ships flying overhead, or if you attach them to a mobile grid, to something that you can fly with, you can get them taking on. You can actually take them to the enemy and do it that way. And a lot of the player-made missile scripts work either via camera ray tracing or via GPS coordinates. The one I'm going to use it can use both, but we're going to use ray tracing for it. And I'm going to be targeting our ship that's over there with these missiles in a moment. So the first thing we need to do is to build a bit of a platform that is going to house our missiles. So I'm going to bring this up, and I'm just going to, let's create a kind of a T shape. Okay, and we'll go one more. Okay, and on the top of here, we're going to go for a merge block. And I'm going to put a few on here because I want to make several missiles. And can we get some in the middle here? Yeah, that'll do nicely. Okay, so this is going to be where our missiles get launched from. Now what we are also going to need here is a way of welding these up, and that's the difficult part. Obviously I've blocked this off now, and that is going to make things a little more difficult. Yeah, we'll let that go over there for a moment, and I'll just sit this down here as well. And let's get rid of that. So we're going to want to have welders coming off of this in a way that are going to be able to weld up those missiles on the top as we use them. So we're going to go back to our old friend, this block, and front and back maybe. Yeah, so we're going to have to do this, I think, to start off with. And then off of here, we're not interested in using these small ports for anything, so I'm just going to build up a little way off of those front and back. Multiple key controls. Let's do that, 60 that side. That side. Okay, so we're going to put our rocket builds up on here, and again we're just going to have a few of these. Like so. And then off of this, what we want to do is take this again, but we want it that way around. Because we're going to want to put welders all the way along on either side. Now this middle one may not get used, we may not be able to weld it, but we'll see. So let's have our welders then in place here. That makes it quite difficult actually. See if we can't get the welder at that level, that is going to be hard. So we might need to build them up a little more on there. We'll see in a moment. But let's just bring this all the way over here. And we're going to do the same at the front. So let's just put them across there. Yes, we've got some blocks in the way at the front, so we'll get rid of those. There we go. So what we are going to need to do is raise up these blocks a little here. And to do that, I am just going to put a couple of just little posts in the middle here, just like this. Is that going to give us enough when I put the merge block on top? Probably not, but what we'll do is just take that across there like that. Okay, so now let's have the merge blocks back on. And I want a space between each one, obviously, so we'll do 3 that side, and again starting here we'll do 3 this side, just like that. So we're now in a position that we can build one of our rockets. Now these rockets are quite interesting, and the script I'm going to be using for these, there's going to be actually a couple of scripts. So we're going to have the launch control script on the base, and that will let us trigger off multiple missiles really easily. And the missile script is going to be this easy LiDAR homing script. It's fire and forget. Really, really helpful. And again, we can grab, if we open in Workshop, yeah, so there is a complete setup guide for it here, and that will help us get things working. So 0 is our mode we're going to use, but let's get the ship, let's get everything set up first. So the required setup for the missile: programmable block, remote control, gyroscope, thruster and power source. And then obviously we need a merge block and some cameras. So let's go set those up. No, don't want to remember changes on that. And we're just going to come down here, and I'm just going to stick let's just stick that in the ground. We'll have a small head, please. And on top of that small head, I'm just going to stick our merge block, because then we can just flip that over and we have a locked merge block that we can build off of, which is awesome. So we need to keep this as thin as possible so that those welders can weld it up. So I think 2 blocks is probably going to be adequate there. So first thing we're going to need is a programmable block. We are going to need a gyro. We're going to need a remote control, which we need to make sure is facing and oriented the right direction. And then we need at least 1 thruster. Now, in my experience, thrusters on these are quite tricksy, and you sometimes want to have one pointing downwards as well, to give it lift in gravity. The script can sort of deal with it, so we're going to see what we can get away with on this. And so I'm going to use the sci-fi atmospheric thruster just because I can. And we want the thrust pointing backwards for that. And I'm just going to stick 2 of them on, just so it's got plenty of lift there. So then on the front of this missile, we're going to build out some blocks. And I think, yep, that should be plenty actually. So let's do that, and I also want a little bit more space than that, but I don't want that merge block to merge with it, so we're just going to do this. And I want to have some cameras on here now, because the cameras are going to be how it finds its targets. And these cameras need to be oriented in the right way. And just to make sure that we can find its target if it's off target a little bit as well, is we'll stick one on either side like that as well. You can also stick one top and bottom if you want. It gives it a little bit more ability to find. Let's do that. Now this one might be a little tricky because of the merge block in the way, but this one should be fine. So we have cameras. This is really the bare minimum for a player-made missile. You could make this bigger, you could make it longer, you could put warheads in it, things like that. It will trigger warheads when it needs to. But one of the things we really want to do, if we look back in this script, let's see how we set this up. So we've got a remote control, we've got a gyroscope, we've got a thruster, we've got a power source. We haven't got a power source. That's a problem. So yeah, we are going to have to make this a little bit bigger because we need a battery on here. So how do we get a battery on here? I think we do that by let's put some little batteries on either side. And I think we're definitely going to want to do that to prevent the merge block from getting stuck on it there. And then having a big battery on the back here is probably going to be the way it'll have to go. So then we're going to want our thrusters on here. I do wonder if that's going to be enough thrusters, so we'll try it with the two. If it's not enough, then we'll add another two onto there. But I think we're good there. So now if we edit the programmable block and we add the easy LiDAR script. Okay. So we've added that. I'm going to leave all of this as it is for the time being. Now I do remember it needing to receive a target from somewhere, and we'll deal with that in just a moment. But this is I think going to be our missile. So let's have a look at these destructions again. So So we've got the forward-facing camera. I'm not going to enable exclude friendly for now because I want it to be able to lock on to friendly targets while we're testing. So it does want side thrusters, some downward thrusters on there. Okay, so it sounds like what we need is some way of aiming built into this tower as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this one off of here, and we're going to have a little platform come out here. And on the end of this platform, I'm going to add another small head here. And I think I'm going to want a normal rotor . Or, actually, no, we'll have a hinge for this. And, no, not that one. I want the small hinge. Where's the small hinge? There we are. Okay, so we've got a small hinge, we've got a rotor there, and then I'm going to put a camera on the front of that hinge. And I'm going to stick a gyroscope and a remote control on there. In fact, let's put the gyroscope on the side here. So this should, if I control that, no, that's not going to work, is it? I need a block there. I need a gyroscope on that block, and then the camera on the front of there. That's how it works. Okay, so in theory, actually, rethinking again, let's put our remote control block there, our camera on the front of the remote control block, and we'll have our gyroscope just on the side of it like that. Okay, so if I now control that, let's stick a antenna on the back of here. stick the antenna on the side there. And I have nothing at all that I can get in here with to give it anything, so let's just stick a control panel on the top of there, and we'll info small grid, and we'll call this designator. So if I now control designator, see again. It's that little hinge. Let's just turn you. Yep, so that hinge is going to need some more torque. We'll have a lower limit of minus 45 and an upper limit of, let's say, 60 on that, just to give us some limits that we're not going to be clanking against things. There we go, that's better. So I think I need to reduce the power on this gyroscope as well. So I'm going to move that down to 20%. And if we give the hinge just a little bit more strength in its torque, so let's go 5,000. The hinge can now hold itself in place, but the gyroscope can still force its way through. And then what we need to do is to take that advanced rotor and lower its torque down to 5,000 as well. And we can now aim. I think that rotor probably needs to have a bit more torque, so we're going to go 8,000 on that. Yep, that is much better. Okay, so just disconnecting from that for a second, I'm just going to have a look. We saw a lot of clanging here. I just want to make sure that there's no damage, which there doesn't appear to be. That's good. So, if I build a seat here now, just a basic control seat is all I want. And I get in this seat, we can now say I want to be able to view that, I want to be able to control this from the seat, which I then do, and I can now control that from here, which is good. Okay, and then in here I want to be able to view the camera. Okay, and we can now view the camera, and I can zoom in. That is very, very hard to control precisely. I think adding a little bit more mass to it might actually help, but okay, so let's jump out of there. Let's set the torque on this hinge a little higher. Yeah, let's go 10. Okay, I now can't control that, so let's bring that down to 8,000. Okay, it's a little bit on the jolty side, but much more controllable. Awesome. Okay, we've got our target in sight anyway, so the next thing that I want then is to have a programmable block somewhere that is going to let me trigger the launching of these missiles. So I'm just going to stick that on the side here for now, and in here I'm going to put the launch control script. So for this launch control script, all I'm going to have to do in theory is make sure that the custom data is configured with the right computer tag, so we know what it's going to call the missile computers. So we can just whack that in there. And we need to make sure that our missile computers are called missile computer. That's perfectly fine. And by putting this block on this end, it means that this missile is the closest missile to the programmable block. So this missile should be the first one to launch. And if we go down here and just name this programmable block missile computer, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to turn this merge block off, let that tilt slightly, and we're going to go copy, and we're going to come up here, and now I should be able to just paste these on here. And we can see a problem. I've made the missiles too wide, so they won't fit, but we can get 4 up here, so that's fine for testing. And we'll paste another one there, and the final one just here. Awesome. Okay, so the plan eventually obviously will be to have a projector underneath each of these merge blocks that will project this missile and have the welders all turned on so that they weld it up immediately. So once one launches, off it goes, welders come on, weld another one up. But we're just going to test this for the moment. And I just want to turn this manually at the moment as well, so let's turn this around to face roughly the direction that we're going to be firing in. And we could use scripts like easy automation or subgrid control scripts, things like that, to control the angle of that rotor from this chair. or even have it match the angle of this rotor. And that would mean that this would always be facing the same direction as this one. That would work quite nicely. But what we're going to do here is I'm going to jump in this seat here. I'm going to control this. I'm going to add our programmable block. So we've got our 4 missile computers. So this is our launch control script. And I'm just going to tell it to run when I press that button. So I'm now going to control the camera. I'm going to target this. Actually, there is one thing we forgot to do, and that is the camera that is on this needs our LiDAR on it. And if we now hit this, we hear a big explosion, but that was obviously not what was intended. So let's have a look what just happened. Where is it? So we can see one of the missiles has left, and it looks like it's left a crater just here. And that is quite interesting. So I'm going to come out here. I'm going to remote connect to our small grid without moving my mouse at all. I am just going to launch the next missile, and let's watch it from here and see what happens. Yep, it's that exact same spot. So in this case, the issue is we don't have anything counteracting gravity for these missiles, which is a little bit on the annoying side. So let's add a downwards facing thruster to the 2 remaining ones on either side. I'm just going to get rid of that. And we'll do the same here and here. So we now have some downwards facing thrusters. They are going to constantly thrust like that, unfortunately. That's a little bit annoying, but if we now back off here and let's watch this from a distance, I'm also going to move my spectator cam over here, so we can see what happens when they come in here. Okay, so we can watch them launch. Let's get reconnected to our grid. We're ready to launch. And launch. And let's go to our spectator cam. Well, that was disappointing. Where did that go? Whoa. Let's reposition our target. Very tricky. Well, it certainly fired them off. I'm not entirely sure where they've gone, so let's have a look in the entity list. So that's what's left of one of them. That's our drill. Here we go. Okay, so they aren't quite working as intended at the moment. Let's see what we can do about that. So the question is, why not? So first and foremost, I think we've got to add those downward-facing thrusters onto the grids here. That is a must. We have it called Missile Computer. Let's see what else we've done wrong. So let's have a look at this then. We are using mode 0. It uses the launching ship's R LiDAR for initial lock-on and R forward for aiming. So what is R forward? So if we run check ship in the argument field on the missile, it will tell us what we need. Okay, so let's try that. Check ship. Forward. Okay, so the remote control needs to have R forward on it. And apparently the cameras need to have our LiDAR on them. So that deals with that. Let's run check ship again. Okay. Let's grab this again now and go put it on these So we'll get another 4 goes at this. The beauty of this is that once it is set up, you'll have self-reloading missile racks that you can just launch these missiles straight at enemy ships, and once you put some warheads in, they can do some serious damage. Okay, so we're going to do this again. We're going to go into our remote access control. Let's make sure we're still targeting. We are. So if I now hit number 2, that did not go anywhere near the ship we were aiming at. Went back over that way again, so something is still missing. So what do these modes do then? So uses the launching ship's R LiDAR for the initial lock-on and R forward for aiming. So maybe we want to use mode 7. See, this says do not tag missile cameras with R LiDAR. Okay, so let's give that a try. So if I... so we've got these 3. Let's take our LiDAR off of all of those cameras. And I think we want to take R forward off of these as well. And let's call them missile R forward, missile remote control. Okay, and let's set this remote control as R forward. Okay, so we'll recompile you. Recompile you, recompile you, and recompile you. Great, so let's try this again. So we're actually expecting these missiles to lift off and then veer off to the right to go after our target ship over there. So we'll control this. Let's just make sure we're on target, which we are, and launch. Ooh, that is looking more promising. And we have an impact. So let's record that from this end then. I'm going to hit launch again. Here it comes. We have an impact. We have success. Now, that is not doing very much damage at all here. We can see against large grid, it's sort of deformed the blocks a little bit, but not a massive amount. So what I'm going to do is we're going to add a warhead onto here. And let's just stick the warheads either side here, that'll work. Okay, so with the warheads attached, we want to use a detonator or proximity sensor. So to make that work, we need to add to these missile cameras, but only to the forward facing ones, the word proximity. And I'm just going to add it to the one for now. So if we now launch that again, let's make sure that we're aiming properly. Yep, I thought so. So we're going to aim at that block right there. And I'm going to launch the last missile and then switch to our spectator view, and what we should see this time is a nice explosion at this end. It should do far more damage. Boom. And now we see the power that these ships can have. That is a small grid, tiny little missile that has just blown a massive hole in the side of this large grid ship. We would have lost a turret. We've lost a big chunk of the conveyor, of the internal conveyor system, and our access to this side of the ship. Really, it's possibly a few batteries. Now you imagine that hitting some of the cargo ships that are up there. If you could fire like 3 or 4 of these missiles all at the same cargo ship, and they lock on, so even if it's moving, you know, once you've got that initial lock with that initial camera, what you're doing with the raycast is essentially tagging a target block in the game. So even if that ship's moving, these missiles will track the target block and will try to hit that block. And if they get within that proximity range, obviously they'll detonate. And there's another feature in this script called a near miss as well. And what that does by default is if it has passed the target block but is only a little bit past it and there is nothing in front of the missile, it will detonate anyway. So even if it was to fly, say we'd got several missiles flying in, and the first ones come in, say this sort of angle has got here, has hit something and detonated, and the second missile coming through is going to fly straight through this gap. When it gets to about here, it's going to detonate anyway, and you can see the stuff in range here still is still going to do some damage. I really love this script. It is a bit of a pain to get set up, but once it's set up, you can target, you can actually have a nice setup for this. So what we're going to do then, we'll come down here, we'll rejig this, we'll put the warheads on, which worked beautifully. We only need the two. We will rename this to have not have LiDAR, but to have proximity. We need to take LiDAR off of all the others. Like so. We don't need R forward on this because R forward is on the launch control. And we can then have another test run with this, I think. So if we grab this, let's put these back up on here. We're going to test just how effective these are now against something that's moving, and also maybe something that's got a bit of protection about it as well. So I'll spawn in one of my other ships. Here we go. Right, let's get rid of that one. So I'm going to spawn in one of my other ships, and we will give it an override on its thrust, just to get it moving. Let's go with the mask. This is one that, in fact, no, let's go with the Skeletor. So this is one that that Splitsy cut apart and made into a assertive cargo ship. It was made for Splitsy's assertive cargo ships mod, which is fine. So I'm just going to place it there for now, and nope, stop that. We don't want it that close then. Let's move it a little bit further away. Let's put it up higher. There we go. I may have to go and check on what damage it just did. But we definitely wanted it to have that that gun active, because we do want it to shoot at these missiles as they're coming in. And what I will do is I will override its engines in a moment. It does have an antenna, so I'll be able to reach it and do it remotely. But I'll override its engines to have maybe just a little bit of forward movement, and then make it a space pirate so that it can shoot back. And what we're going to do is just take control of this and get the aiming set up. targets. Okay, so we can see the Skeletor up here. So we'll get a rough target on it. Let's zoom out a little so it's a little easier on the targeting. Okay, we'll disconnect from that. I'm now going to connect to the Skeletor. And we're going to take the forwards thrusters and let's give them just a little bit of forward thrust. A bit more than that maybe. Okay, let's get this spectator cam up here. So I'm not sure that's even moving still, so there we are, we're moving now. Awesome. So now if I control our little missile script, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we go back up here. And what we should see is those missiles will come up here and they'll hit this, even though it'll have way moved past where it would have done. Here we go. So that was pretty. That was 4 direct hits, even though the ship had easily moved past where I'd been aiming. Didn't take it down in this case because I was aiming at a cargo container rather than the engines. But if I'd got my raycast targeting one of the large thrusters here or at the back, it very well could have taken that down. But you can see just how much damage they did. And how quick they came in. One of those missiles might have been taken out by the turret, maybe 2, but I think out of the 4 at least 2 of them would have hit there. And if you can do that kind of damage to a cargo ship, then there's certainly some utility for these things. I think that's about all I've got time for today, but I'm definitely going to be making use of this kind of setup in our survival game, because we definitely want to be going after some of those cargo ships that are up there, taking them out. And when we get to space, having self-printing missiles in our main spaceship, once we start building a larger capital ship, where we can just launch them at reavers, things like that, I think is going to give us huge benefits in terms of keeping ourselves safe, keeping our main ship safe, but still being able to take out cargo ships and pirate ships at a distance. In space, it's obviously a bit easier as well. The atmospheric thrusters are quite bulky. In space, we can just use ion thrusters once we have the materials. Or even a couple of small hydrogen tanks and some hydrogen thrusters would do the job as well, just so long as we were using a connector to refuel them. So that's all for today. Hope you've enjoyed the show. It's been a lot of building, a lot of trial and error, but that's how engineering goes. And we found out some things, and that's good. Have a great rest of your weekend, guys. Have a great week. We'll be back tomorrow with some more Space Engineers Survival at 7 PM UK time. I hope to see you then.